okay, well, how is she doing in these groups that she's supposed to do well in? And the answer is, she's not doing that great. Hispanics are another example. She should be pulling so much more weight with Hispanics right now, but a lot of Hispanics are like, well, wait a second, lady, what are you going to do for me? I'm not buying it. Reince Priebus talking about this on the weekend shows this weekend. I want you to listen.
What we're also seeing is that Donald Trump is remaining very strong with Hispanics in that poll at 41%, which is astonishing. That he's at 50% with voters that are male voters under 30. The reality is that she didn't address the most important issues that are affecting the election, which is the economy and the border. And she didn't address it, which is why the polling isn't moving. So while she lied about Trump, he's going to pass a national abortion ban. He's going to monitor women's pregnancies. She didn't answer the question that David Muir asked, are you better off than you were 4.5 years ago? Didn't answer it. Didn't answer the question on whether or not, why she waited so long to address the border. And she didn't answer the question on whether she supported a single restriction on abortion. She avoided it. So she doesn't benefit.
Right. Yeah. In other words, she's fantastic at avoiding questions. And apparently the ABC News crew didn't feel like they had to push her at all to actually answer anything. They didn't have to correct her on anything either. So Kamala avoided offering, it's actually to her own detriment, because I think a lot of people were going into that debate thinking, okay, if I can get something out of her, if I actually can come away with some sense that she's going to improve our economy, she's going to be able to deal with our border. But in fact, they got none of that. And I would just say it's likely because Kamala has no ideas on the border or the economy, the opportunity economy that she talks about. I guess an opportunity, you know, if you want a handout, $25,000 for new homeowners, that's the opportunity economy that she's talking about. I don't think anybody believes it, because she's also the same lady that promised, right, so wholeheartedly that she was going to defy the Supreme Court and she was going to get everybody's student loans forgiven, except that didn't happen. Because, you see, it can't, because it's not constitutional. And so she's coming up with these ideas that are not constitutional. And American voters are like, well, we don't really buy that. And by the way, we don't really believe that. Young voters especially, I mean, why should they trust her? She hasn't done anything for them. And there they are in the Democrat Party, like, high-fiving each other over that Taylor Swift endorsement. And then, of course, Trump really went to town on Taylor. Big time, right? This was before the assassination attempt this weekend. Anyway, is Taylor really going to help her? I mean, even CNN's admitting it may not be the magic bullet.
When it comes to the actual voting demographics and the map, the electoral map itself, where could Taylor Swift's endorsement potentially make a difference?
Yeah, I think young voters. It's a group of voters that Kamala Harris is struggling versus what you might expect from a normal Democratic candidate in a normal year. So Democrat versus Trump margin. In September of 2020, look at this. Joe Biden was up by 28 points. He was doing particularly poorly among young voters, those under the age of 30, when he dropped out of the race, up by just 7 points. Look, Kamala Harris is doing somewhat better than that at this point, up by 15 over Donald Trump, but still really lagging where Joe Biden was back in 2020.
Yeah, really lagging. I just walked you through those numbers, and really lagging vis-a-vis where Hillary Clinton was as well. So, you know, the 2020 race was pretty darn close, as was 16. This one's going to be super close. And I think the polls keep missing something. It's one of the reasons why I keep looking at the betting markets. We're going to get to that in just a moment, but let me show you this one. This came out recently, just last week. This is the Insider Advantage poll. Michigan, 49 to 48, still within 2 points margin of error. But nonetheless, you see him up by a point. Very interesting, right? Because again, those swing states are critical. She's not doing well in those swing states. She's not getting the momentum that she should have gotten coming out of that debate if she theoretically won it, as all the pundits want you to believe, which is one of the reasons why Nate Silver's model continues to have her ahead. This is a almost hit job on Nate. The salon was okay. They weren't too too tough on him. But I will say this, a lot of the liberal media is absolutely freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, Nate Silver's model. Here it is, guys. Trump was up higher, like some 64 points in this model before the debate. He came down to 61.6% versus Harris's 38.1% chance of winning on September 12th. Now, the reason this is different than, say, the polls that CNN is showing you is that Nate has, I like to call it sort of like a financial model. Like he's modeling all of this stuff out, and he's modeling it in a different way than just the traditional polls. He's put all the polls in there, but he's got certain expectations for how one should do, say, coming out of the DNC, or how one should do coming out of the debate. And she's just not carrying it. And this is what he's reflecting there in his polls. I think it's going to be hard. I really think that what you might ultimately see, now anything could happen. I mean, let's hope we have a candidate, for goodness sakes. I mean, I say that, and I mean, I can't believe I'm having to say that. But this is the second time they've tried to take him out, and that's really alarming and really, really frightening.